Gurdjieff's philosophy is very beautiful, very comprehensive. The way it's been laid out is appealing on multiple levels, physical, emotional, spiritual, as you pointed out. But because there doesn't seem to be an organized line, there seems to be an advantage for a lot more individualists to take advantage and to use the teachings for egotistic purposes.
Right.
And I find and a lot of what I've heard about a lot of the Gurdjieff movement really comes from these individuals that seem to.
Yeah, it's also comes from the same phenomenon of students leaving the teacher at early stages. And
yes.
This was even true with John Bennett. And John Bennett studied in the early 20s. And when presented with a choice by Gurdjieff to study more intensely, he didn't want to be supported by Gurdjieff, and his pride kept him away. And he basically studied with Ouspensky and did his own groups and came back 20 or so years later.
And this was the founder of your community.
Right. And then was only with Gurdjieff for the last year of his life. So even though he worked on the Gurdjieff teachings for many years, his contact didn't have that depth. And so many of his students didn't have that long intensive period with him to be able to get beyond some of these points. One of the problems that I see in many of the manifestations of his teachings is people only learn to develop themselves to a degree of separation, to a degree of conscious as being an individual, but not then learning to be consciously part of the whole again. So normally in our mechanical action of life, we have to separate enough to see, well, I am here doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have a dual awareness that I'm speaking and that I am aware of my speaking. But then, once that separation is made, it's then possible to reconnect with the whole in a conscious way, so that you then become a part of the same energy that I am. And this energy expands to be a global kind of connection with the whole. So there's a separation, and then there's a remembering. And so a lot of what Gurdjieff later talked about self-remembering is to bring the separate members as part of a whole again. So without that step, and just acting in separation of being conscious of what I'm doing, it doesn't give the degree of connectivity and degree of compassion that's required to grow past that point, and also to act in those kinds of ways you're speaking of. So we get a lot of strong, powerful individuals, but not very loving, compassionate ones at the same time. And the irony is one of the biggest powers in the universe is love, but you can't have love in that separation in the same conscious way, because love becomes the unifier. And then if I have that kind of energy, I'm less likely to abuse you as a student or whatever.
And we're talking about love that is not the heart-beating, pulse-pounding type of love, of course, but the even, fulfilling love that most people have not consciously experienced.
Right.
One of the things that's very heavily associated with Gurdjieff's teachings is the enneagram, a geometric figure.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to mind when you were talking about the reunification. How does what is the enneagram?
The enneagram is a symbol that's actually based on the decimal system.
Mm-hmm.
It came into circulation maybe in the Pythagoras period.
Mm-hmm.
And when people started playing with decimals, they saw that when you divided 1 by 7, 2 by 7, 3 by 7, you get a repeating decimal. And the numbers in the repeating decimal use themselves in each of those fractions. So the fraction 1/7 comes out to be 0.142857 infinite,
Mm-hmm.
but 2/7 becomes 285714, which are the same numbers but rearranged so that the 1/4 comes at the end. So 3/7 becomes 428571, and et cetera up to 6/7. Now those numbers, the 142857, are those lines in that geometric figure. If you number the points around the circle, starting at the one on the top would be 9, going backwards to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Those numbers draw the lines of the Enneagram. And then there's a triangle. And the triangle represents what Gurdjieff called the law of three. Basically, that every phenomenon has a aspect of affirmation, receptivity or denial, and reconciliation. And in the symbol, it's represented as that triangle. And the other numbers, based on the fraction of 1/7, represent the law, what he called the law of seven, or various phenomena having to do with how someone can evolve. So putting them together into the symbol enables one to look at one's transformation or any kind of aspect of transformation that one's looking at in a systematic way. And for whatever reasons, these aspects of 1/7 have some insight if you look at your own process. So in our process of transformation, any process we try to involve ourselves in, we come to a period where there's more difficulty. And the tendency that we have often is to give up at that point of difficulty. Well, on the symbol, that point of difficulty may be represented as that triangle. And so when one recognizes that, well, this is part of everything that I do, that these laws come into it, then all I have to understand is that I need some additional effort here.
In order to
Right,
create the balance in my own life.
to get back to that next point. And then at the next sort of inconsistency in what one's doing, then what's needed is some kind of inner reaching. And the degree of inner reaching then defines the degree of transformation in that process. So the symbol becomes a way of basically understanding that things aren't linear. So the linear part of the Enneagram is just around the circle, that something happens within time.